All right. So what are we talking about, guys? We have on my agenda is how to make a 2-year plan and the relationship back to this article. And the second question is any general questions around careers. So I haven't prepared anything. I've sent the article. I'm happy to talk about it. I shared a little bit about my how I would view the how this article influenced my own thinking through a 2-year plan, or for in my case, I usually do it 5, 10, and 20 years out. But one of the things that really influenced me was this idea of how do you make sure that you're measuring yourself in the right way. And in the previous session with the FFL, there's a lot of jokes and talks about marriage and children, as usually come. Then one thing that I think you'll see, and it was also alluded to in the article, school is a safe space and it's a calm space. You have a very clear structure. Everyone was saying, or many people were saying, they're looking forward to Sunday because they'll be quote unquote told what to do. The next week's challenge is coming up. It's clear that there's week 10, 11, 12, the 2-year plans. Actually, most people are following the structure that we have laid out, and that's common in a school environment. But once you finish, and the world kind of hits you from all different spaces, once you have family responsibilities, and they may be immediate family, it might be your children, your spouse, your parents, life gets very busy. And this is where, at times in my life, where I've been confused by competing priorities. So even today, I have an example. Do I spend longer at work or do I go home earlier because my daughter wants me to come home and hang out with her? And so as you're faced with these competing priorities, as all of you will have, I think having a concrete way where this is what is important to me in the longer term helps you to be able to step back and say, this is how far I want to get in each of these important areas in the next 2 years. And I've seen in the few that I've seen handed in, I think most people are starting to get that. One of the things that I've seen that hasn't been done very well is to be very specific. So people are saying, using one example from one of the learners, they said, I want to finish this book. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that you actually want to read the book? Does it mean you want to understand the book? Does it mean that you want to be able to do all the exercises in the book? If you say get a job in data science, what does that mean? What type of job are you looking to get? How do you define a job? If you don't have a full-time job, but you're doing a 2 or 3 month contract, or you're busy on Upwork, we need to be able to understand what it is that we're aiming to achieve. And I think that this article, having read quite a few, does one of the best jobs of laying it out in a bit of a, not a very direct way, but in I would say more of a storytelling or a roundabout way, how he went ahead and did that. And there's a couple of things that stand out there for me. So the approach that I take, and which I'm advocating today, is that you come up with a framework for your life, and he lays them out somewhere there about relationship with your family and friends and your community, the impact that you have in terms of your professional life. Those are two things that he lays out. But I would really encourage each of you to come up with a framework which makes sense in each of your own lives. And I think that that'll be the basis for each of your 2-year plans. So that's all I have. I don't know how I can help you. I think there were some of you who mentioned that it was very difficult. Maybe we can start by just asking, are there any of you who wonder why we are going through this exercise? I suppose if you're wondering, then you switch this tutorial, but does it make sense? Does this exercise make sense to you? I'm just a bit surprised to see Ken in sunlight. Normally he's chilling back on his computer. I don't know, maybe yeah, Lowell, go ahead. So let's unmute if everyone wants to talk. Let's keep it super informal. So you don't need to ask, just unmute and talk.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. So yeah, thank you for doing this. So I think basically for me, the reason why I've been finding writing the whole career, the 2-year plan difficult is basically because of the uncertainties going around, and well, like I'm not just sure how the next year will be, let alone the next 2 years. I guess, I mean, beginning of this year, I wouldn't have thought I'd be doing a data science training now. I wouldn't have thought I would be in a meeting here right now. So like couple of months ago, I'd written 5 years plan that everything went down in the drain. So I guess I'll have to do it in good faith again, based on my overall career objective. But at the same time, it's just the uncertainty for me. I don't know, maybe for others too. So what would you advise in such a case? I still know what I want really, But then,
I would say it's really important to, and this is why putting out your life plan is important because it's good to be, I would say, sticky on the vision. So you need to stick to your long-term vision. Now, how you get there may end up being completely different. So when Yebabel and I talked about this edition of 10 Academy and even 10 Academy in general, we've one of the analogies that we use is we want to walk from where we are. We both happen to live in Germany just by chance. We want to walk from Germany to the United States. Now we have no idea how we're going to get there. Are we going to take a train, a boat? Are we going to hitchhike? Are we going to build a car? Do we get a bus? We don't know how to cross this ocean, which is big. But we have this idea in mind of what it is that we want to achieve. And so that's the vision that we have. Now, the actual details of that can be very different. Of course, we didn't predict coronavirus because, yeah, it was just somewhat unpredictable. But coming up with this long-term vision is really important. And I think this is where, even though we're talking about a 2-year plan, in the back of my head, I would like to encourage you to, like the article says, to come up with a plan for your life. And even if you don't know exactly, you're all still quite young, you don't know exactly where David Elvis, I don't know who David is. Um, I don't, even if we don't know exactly what it's going to look like right now, coming up with even asking the right questions, what are the frameworks that are important to me? I think it's an important addition. And where you'll end up in the next 2 years, you can come up with a plan, and you may end up being something totally different. But what I would say is your 2-year plan is successful if you're moving in a good way towards the vision that you've set out and that you're fulfilling all goals. If you, at the end of your 2 years, if you have totally neglected your physical health, assuming that's one of your goals, or you neglected your family, assuming that's one of your goals, then you know that you're on the wrong track. So even coming up with the right measurement system, I think is really important. So don't worry too much about, I would say use this framework, come up with your sort of, start thinking about what your long-term life goals could be, even if you don't know the specific number, that you have an idea of what are the different things that are important to me. And so that's what I would call the pillars in your life. And I mentioned already, I have four. One is my fulfilling my responsibilities. The second is professional success, and I have kind of a number in mind there. The third is that I want to enjoy my time on this world and kind of enjoy the fruits of the world. And the fourth is staying healthy in the long term. Now, with beyond that, the details of what it means to fulfill my duties as a parent or as a son or as a spouse, that'll change as I go. But even having those four things in mind, that keeps me very, very grounded because I need, if I'm not doing all four of those things, I know that something's off base. And so I would just encourage you to at least come up with those pillars first, and then the 2-year goals from there. So for those of you who have joined new, it's an open session. What we're talking about is 2-year plans. I've I've just talked about what's important, what I found useful in terms of this article, in terms of how will you measure your life. I think it's important to set out at the end, that's one measurable quantity that we have. We are living, we will all die. We don't know when we will die, but we should set out to achieve, to use the time that we have on this world as well as possible. And thinking about, and this is what the article talks about for me, how do we measure whether we've used that time that we have as people in the best time? What do we want to achieve in that time? And then work backwards from there. And this is where I want you to start your 2-year plan. Maybe it sounds morose, and maybe I'm getting old. I'm the OG, as Binyam would say. But I really think that that's the one thing that we have. And even if there's unpredictable things that come up, the time that we have in the world is the one irrefutable thing that we have.
Hello?
Prosper, go ahead.
Okay, so I think I would just share this briefly. We are all very much aware of the nuances we have in whatever you're doing, and maybe the fears of you thinking that what if I don't fulfill this plan that I set out for myself, then I'm a failure. I think we should be aware of the fact that we are uncertain about what is happening around us. However, if we put our plan together as a guide, that would help us. I think I shared the other time that if we are looking at a plan, a model that you could use to to set out your own plan, just use the SMART plan, sort of. It shouldn't just be anything big. It could just be basic thing like Arun said. So maybe today you set out your plan that you want to finish model 1, 2, 3 in a day. So your target will be based on that you're setting it out. So then that would be something you should work on. I also think that that would also help you in the long term. At this point, you're taking a data science course, so I believe that most of you would want to still remain in the field. So your plans should be guided towards that. Be ready for any nuances that would happen. It could mean that you might not end up directly doing data science. You might end up leading in a different role. So mine is just to encourage you to still have that roadmap as a guide and be available for any kind of improvement that comes along the way. It's just to help you go on. I also do this every year. I write down what I want to achieve, and uh, quite often I go back and read through, and sometimes I take the ones that I was able to do and the ones that I have not been able to do, and then change it with something different. So it's just for you to stay on track, be more focused, and also be able to measure what you've been doing over time. It could be financial goal, it could be career goal. So I believe this exercise or this kind of way is to help you to be more responsible and to have some well thought through plan as a guide. So mine is to just encourage you to take this on. You don't have to get it right, but just take it on, right? That's all I have to add to this, Aaron.
All right, so yeah, what questions do we have? I mean, it seems like there's some questions around the 2-year plan. So shoot, type or just ask. Kevin?
Yes, can you hear me?
It's a bit faint, but yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, for me, one of the major things that was happening when I went ahead to write mine was that the anxiety of not really knowing where you want, what you want, or rather what you want at a particular moment will be there. Or is it the same thing that you want going to do? And being thrusted into the reality of it that now you have to think these things for yourself was gave me some sort of anxiety. And how do you deal with that at that particular moment when you don't really know? Yes, you have set your pillars, and you don't really know what you really want to achieve at a certain time or at a certain period.
So I think that's probably reflective of what a lot of people are feeling. If you don't decide, life will decide for you. So you need to decide. Um, it's normal to feel anxiety. It's normal to be scared of taking responsibility for the outcomes of your decisions. You can't. You have to make a decision, and I would. So most of you took STEM courses or did STEM undergraduate degrees. Not all of you, most of you, and there was always often a right or a wrong answer. But in life, I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. You need to make a decision and go go for it with full heart, with full stomach, with full energy, and then see what happens. Keep adjusting as you go, but don't be afraid of making a decision. The worst thing you can do is to make no decision. Even if you go down the wrong pathway, it's not that you are, there's almost nothing, there's no, there's almost no pathway you can take, which is truly the wrong decision. This is why for me, I wanted the one thing that will not change is that I will die. And as long as I have an idea of what do I want to have achieved by the time I die, then the goal that I'm moving this pathway, as long as I'm moving towards that overall goal, then I don't worry too much. And of course, there is some anxiety, but I don't worry too much about am I making the right decision or not. So I would just say, just to answer your question, Kevin, don't worry too much about making the perfect decision. Be happy with making a decision which is good enough and that moves towards your goal. And then keep adjusting, be honest with yourself, keep adjusting every day, every week as you need to make a decision. But don't make no decision because you're afraid of not making the perfect decision. Anyone else? Let's make it interactive. We can chat. You can type it in the chat window if your connection is not good.
let me go again.
Yeah.
How do you, or rather, how do you leverage your decisions and your goals against what is expected from you by maybe your parents and society?
Could you ask the question again?
I'm asking, how do you leverage your decisions and, or rather, your decision making to make a certain goal versus what is expected of you by society and by your parents or by your peers around you?
I mean, that's a I can't. So it seems like you're alluding to that the decision that you want to make may not be accepted by your parents and or the society around you. Um, it's a very personal choice that each of you will have to make. I think that the way I look at it is that we have the obligation to ourselves and the obligation to our family and to our society to use our time in the best way that we think is possible. I can answer that question maybe in two ways, both as a son, but also as a parent. Um, there's things that my children have started to do. They're not so small anymore. They've started to do that I don't agree with, or I don't really like, or I don't appreciate. Small stuff now. My son likes video games a bit too much, and he's fighting with us about playing more video games than I would like him to play. But at the end, when he wakes up and I see him, I want to make sure that he's not living my life, because at a certain point I won't be there and he will be. I want to make sure that he's living the right life for him. So I can say, in terms of for the parents, I think you have to really have the strength of conviction to use your time in the best possible way. And I don't think I know any parent who would want their child to be unhappy with his or her life, even if they're fulfilling my own life expectations. It doesn't make it easier. But I think that there's a huge range of possibilities within the type of thing that we're talking about, which is getting a job, doing good work, impacting society, both where you live in Africa and the rest of the world, to where all of that can fit. So I would say, first, be honest, be true to yourself. And I really mean that. And maybe it takes steps to get, if you want to do something which is completely controversial, then I would say be honest with yourself about why you want to do that, and maybe take small steps to get there. But as a parent, I can say that even if my children wanted to do something that I thought was completely crazy, I would rather die with them happy rather than die with them unhappy, but having done what I thought was good for them. So Lowell, I think, you know what, sometimes I had a moment where I was about all of your ages, where I was frustrated. I wanted to make a career change, and I was really worried about how would I do it. And I was applying to different schools and I didn't know how it would go. And my now wife, then girlfriend, she said something to me which really helped me. She was like, look, even if it takes you a year longer to get to where you want to get to, don't don't in the long term, an extra year is not a lot of time. And she was absolutely right. And that gave me the sort of confidence to not worry about what it is that I wanted to do. So all of you here, now some of the people who are on the call, the majority of you really put a lot of effort into this, into what we are doing here. And so I think you found a faster pathway to get towards the data science that you wanted, the data science goal that you had. So don't stop working towards your goal, and realize that sometimes it's going to go a bit slower. Sometimes you get a job which is useless, or you get a bad manager, you get a useless project, but don't stop walking towards your goal. So even if it takes you a little bit of time, even if you have resource problems, if you have if you're very, very clear about about what it is that you want to reach, I can guarantee you that there is nothing that will stop you from getting there. It might take you a little bit longer. The actual pathway that you described, it may end up being something different. But this is what Yevabel and I keep telling ourselves, that we are going to find a way to walk to the United States, and that's our analogy for this 10 Academy program. And we know that the ocean is coming from Europe to the United States. We know the ocean is coming. We know it's far, and we know that there are going to be a lot of setbacks. But we've decided that one way or another, we're going to make this happen. There's lots of things that are imperfect about the approach that we're taking, just like there's a lot of things that are imperfect about the approach that you'll take. But don't worry about getting the perfect approach. And don't worry about what people are posting on Facebook or about LinkedIn. Everybody will have your journey. I can tell you that if you are following the pathway that you feel good about for yourself and it fulfills your long-term life goals, that energy and that positive feedback and that sort of laser-like life, which is a whole nother idea that maybe I'll share one day. That positive feedback is probably the best way to describe it, will mean that you will end up getting there a lot faster than you would otherwise. Is there a professional format of writing the career plan? I haven't found a good format that I'm happy with. For me, I simply, this is to answer Jeanette's question, I start with my life pillars, and then just break it down to what do I want to achieve, and making sure that I can measure whether I've achieved it or not in a specific time frame. So right now I'm running on a 10-year plan, and for each of those trying to have a very, very measurable goal, so I can say, yes, I've achieved that. No, I haven't achieved that. So Stephanie, if you don't know what you want, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's very normal. But time passes, and so you have to decide every morning what you're going to do with your day. So on the 1st of November, I would just encourage you to. So I think that it's one of the worst things you can do in life is just to float, and floating sometimes is good, but I think you should pick even if you consciously decide that you're going to do nothing for a specific period of time because you're thinking and you're reflecting. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I would encourage you to do that in the format of going for a multi-day walk, or doing some exercise, or going to visit different people. You can sit and meditate, you can try and decide, but I think deciding what you're going to do with your time is important. So I think that doing that for a certain period of time while trying to reflect on what it is that you want to do with your life is okay. I wouldn't let it go on for more than a couple of weeks, because you should be doing something. So even if you don't know exactly what it is that you want, you could consciously say, look, I'm going to experiment. So I want to, and I think people, if you're really honest with yourself, the easiest thing to do is to fool yourself. If you're honest with yourself, I think people know what it is that they want to do. And then that gets overlaid with what my parents say, but my uncle and aunt say, but my neighbor says, but I don't have internet, but I don't have money. And I think the biggest worry that most of us have is, but what if I try that and it doesn't work? What if I apply to that great job that I always wanted and they say no? That's okay. I mean, if you don't try, you really won't know. So I would, yeah, I mean, take this, if nothing else, as a stamp of approval. I am telling you guys, I've been working in education in Africa for some time, you guys are good. The class that we have here is good. And when we said that you can make it, if you put the time and the energy and the work into it, you can make it. So don't hesitate to worry, to try for what it is that you want. And even if you fail along the way, yeah, it'll happen. You just got to stand up and keep working. So for people who have just joined, we're just having an open discussion. Feel free to unmute to ask questions. We're just talking about 2-year plans and longer term career prospects. One comment I wanted to make, one trend or behavior I've seen is I feel like a lot of people either want to go for really, really simple jobs or the very biggest, best job that they can find. So either working at the local person that their uncle or their aunt connects them to, or they want a job at Facebook or Google. Or when people become entrepreneurs, they kind of feel like, you know what, I'm going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, otherwise I'm a failure. I think that that's a wrong approach. I think that having a good plan and going step by step by step by step by step is important. And what that also means is don't be afraid of applying for normal jobs or normal careers or in between steps and saying, I'm going to do this for 1 or 2 years until I get to the next step in my career. So I think sometimes people apply for Google or the local company. I would recommend against that. Only being at Google is not your only measure of success. Ada's asking if we should put timestamps in our plans. Yes, absolutely. I would say every year you should be revising your plan. I think having lifelong goals is important, and of course they'll be revised as you go. I really like the 5, 10, and 20-year time frame, because I find that 5 years is enough to get things done. 10 years, you can really be ambitious. In 10 years, you can get a lot done. If you don't give up on that, you can get a lot done. And 20 years, hey, those are some aspirational goals. In 20 years, most of you will be getting close to 50. Most of you will be settled down, might have families. But the work that you do now will be setting you for that type of life that you want to have then.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've answered my question, right?
Okay.
Like the one I posted the question before
Yeah, I
my
did.
internet got disconnected.
You didn't hear my answer. Okay.
Yes, I was disconnected.
Okay. So what did I say? You should go back and look at the recording. No, I'm just kidding. No, you should be.
Thank you.
Look, you have to be practical, Lawal. I think that even if it takes you a little bit longer than you might expect, don't give up on your goals. Don't just say, look, I can't get internet, so I'm going to stop. I think that each of you, when you applied to this program, probably faced more challenges than you realize. And I'm sure that each of you knows at least one person who could have done really well, but they probably said, look, I can't manage the internet, or how am I going to manage with my 3 gigabytes of RAM? Or I don't have the time, or they're not paying me, or who are these guys? And they could have come through and they could have learned something useful for themselves. So you found a way. And even if it was not as good as it could have been, you probably could have done better modeling if you had a better connection or a better PC or more electricity. You found a way. So don't give up on your goals. Stick to it. It might take you a little bit longer, but I think the worst thing that you can do is start to lose track of what it is that you actually want to achieve. So even if you have resource constraints, having your clear goal in life, I think, is one of the most important things that you can do. But be sticky on the vision, where it is that you want to get to, and the details of exactly how you get there, it'll vary. And the analogy that I gave with Yababa and I with this exact program, is that we have this, we kind of, the joke that we have amongst ourselves is we want to figure out a way to walk to the United States from Europe. Now, there's all these problems, including the ocean that's in between, and we don't know if we're going to get a train, a bus, get a car, we're going to hitchhike, we're going to bike. We don't know, but we know where we want to get to. And then every day we wake up trying to figure out what's the best thing that we can do today, or next week, or the next batch. So don't give up your vision, and accept that, look, if you have no power in your place and you don't have money for a generator or for diesel, okay, you might be delayed by a week or two and you will have setbacks along your way. I would just encourage you, don't give up on your goals. Ada's asking about timestamps. Yes, I think there should be divisions. I think monthly, depending on the phase in your life, it might be, for me, it's a bit too often. My life doesn't change that much month to month, at least in all phases. But I think that, yeah, monthly for me is too often. For you, it might work. I would say at least every year you should be thinking about what it looks like month on month. Sorry, year on year, not month on month. So, open for questions.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I'm really worried about is when you are in Africa, you don't really have the luxury to pursue your true purpose. So I think that's a big problem. So what I'm saying is, for example, I really love data science, and I want my next job, my career to be data science. But like in the next 2 or 3 months, if I get a job that can pay me like I don't know, a lot of money, I think I'd be so tempted to take that, even if it's not on data science, because like if I miss that, then the alternative would be finding a job in Ethiopia, which pays like mostly around $300 to $400 a month. So that's not really that's not enough, I would say. So like, how do you see that?
So I'm going to ask you the same question. What about the job that you're describing prevents you from becoming a data scientist in the 2-year time frame?
Sorry, come again.
If you got the good job that pays well,
Mm-hmm.
what about taking that job would prevent you from becoming a data scientist in 2 years?
I'm sorry, I still don't get your question. Can
You
you?
what is this well-paying job that you described that, and what part of that well-paying job prevents you from becoming a data scientist in 2 years?
Oh yeah. So for example, if it's in a totally different field, even if it's in computer science, for example, let's say it's a web development job or something different from data science. So it's going to be really hard to focus on data science while you're on a job on a different field,
Why?
wouldn't it?
Why?
I
Why?
mean, like, I don't know. If it's your job, you learn every day. So you improve your skills and get promotions, stuff like that. But so if you get other jobs rather than the data science skill you have will freeze. I guess you don't work as much because you're probably going to be so busy with the other job. So
Hmm, I mean, that's possible, but I think you can look at it in a positive way. And this is where I'm saying the realities will come up. But if you really want to become a data scientist and you're working as a computer scientist or as a programmer, what would prevent you from doing things in the evenings or the weekends, or you have then a good laptop and maybe electricity and you can stay late, you can be open with your team and your manager. I'm going to spend 5 hours a week learning myself. Is that okay with you if I use the internet or the electricity? Um, what prevents you from being active in the company and saying, look, we are not a data driven business. I know how to program, but I think I can also add the data science part to what we're doing right now. What prevents you, and I don't know which sort of job exactly you're describing, but this being true to what it is that you want to do. And the world it's full of more opportunities, I think, than we realize, but you need to find that pathway and or create that pathway.
okay, so a different scenario. What if we decide to go to grad school, for example? Like, would that work? Doing data science on the side, would that work?
So there's no would it work or would it not work? I don't think there's definitely no way. I so I worry sometimes about graduate school being used as a placeholder, where one of the hardest questions people ask, what is it that you do? And somebody once described it to me, and I think it was absolutely true. It's another way of asking, what are you contributing to society? And it's a very safe answer to say, look, I'm doing my master's in stats, or I'm doing my master's in data science, and I'm doing it somewhere else. And it sounds great, right? Then you've answered that question, you're respectable, your parents are happy, your community is happy. But are you using that time in the best possible way, would be my question to you. And are you sure you're not just doing that master's or PhD just to be doing something? So if you're doing it for the right reasons, I think it's absolutely fine. But if you're doing it just because you want to have something to do and it's a safe place to spend between 1, 2, and 5 years, I think that's the wrong reason. It's a long time, and this can be one of the most productive times that you have in your life. So I mean, you guys need to decide. But I would say, so if somebody wants to really become, let's say, a computer vision engineer or a computer vision scientist or doing really advanced deep mathematics, then I think it's probably useful to learn that in school. I went back to school because I wanted to change careers away from electrical engineering into sustainability and development. And I felt that not partly because of what I wanted to learn, but partly because I wanted that quote unquote stamp on my CV so that I was more open for that market. So I spent a year doing that. Um, but I would say I don't see as much of a contradiction as you're describing, Binyam. And maybe I'm not getting it. But if you get a job doing computer science, I don't see it being that far away from data science. And I would actually see it as an opportunity for you to stay active, to do, as somebody mentioned, side projects, to do, even if it's just Kaggle competitions, to pick up freelance work, to stay busy, to keep applying for different jobs that are really interested, to network, to talk to people. I mean, there's so many possibilities. So I'm not seeing the contradiction, but maybe I'm missing your point.
No, like you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. And so maybe just to build on that, it's so I'm telling you guys a lot of personal stories, but I finished my master's and I studied fiber optics and photonics in Canada. And I was looking for a job, and I went back to my master's supervisor, and he and I was asking him for advice. And he was an Egyptian guy, very big guy, he had a big stomach, and he would laugh, and his stomach would kind of move like half a second after he laughed because he was a very big man, nice guy. And he started laughing. He laughed at me for a good 10 or 15 seconds, and he's like, "What? You thought that you would do a master's and then find a job in exactly the same field as you did your thesis in?" He said, "The world doesn't work like that. You have this education. Now you need to go out and figure out what are you going to do with it, and it's not going to be exactly what you imagine it to be, but that's fine. That's how the world works." And so I think the same thing is true. You will probably not find a job that says junior data scientist in your country that needs exactly what we taught you. When we said a job ready data scientist, a big part of it is that you guys don't know everything, but you know at least the language to ask the right questions. You know the techniques and the places to go and to start self-learning the things, areas in which you need to go further. And you also have a community of people that you can work with. So you will still need to be creative. I think that there will always be trade-offs, and this is why I will advocate again, come up with your framework for life and figure out what is the importance between respecting your community obligations, your family obligations, your obligations to yourself, your health obligations, whatever else it is that is important to you, and also your professional success. And that will help you balance and go towards your goal. And this is why I also said 2 years. 2 years is a long time. Even if in November you get like a 3 month contract work setting up a really complicated web server for something which has nothing to do with data science, I'm sure you're going to find a way. You need to find a way to stick towards your 2 year plan. And if your 2 year plan is, I want to be a data scientist, but this job is 3 months and it pays really well, and that means that November, December, January, I'm working really hard. I have no time for that, but I earn enough money that after that I can buy a really good laptop and then spend 2 months sitting at home and just learning or doing a course, or I'm going to set myself up for another sort of job where I can just apply for the stuff that I want to do, or I'm going to become a Kaggle junkie, or I'm going to spend money buying AWS resources. Then think in that 2 year time frame. Be creative. There's no. I don't want you guys to just get a job and yeah, I don't want you guys to just get a job and just be boring. I don't know. I mean, somebody asked Yevabel about his net worth, and he answered it well. I mean, one of his aspects of net worth that's hard to answer is your freedom. Is he doing what he wants to do? Of course, he could. He could have gotten a really simple data science job doing other stuff, which I mean, then he'd be paid well, but maybe he has no freedom. So it depends on how you measure it. But be creative to get to the goal that you want to get to. Software development, yeah. I mean, so look, we're out there. For us, I mean, we're happy to discuss, or I'm happy to discuss careers on a one-on-one basis. We're not actively looking for software development jobs. You guys are, I think you're underestimating how good you guys are. We have to find, and I know the markets are tough, and we're still sticking to what we said. You guys, I believe that you guys will be job ready if you're not already. We do want to place 10 people into jobs by the end of the year, and I think I'm optimistic that that'll happen. And for everyone else, we need to find creative ways to move ahead. Okay. Yes, Binyamin and Mulderwork also have nice new photos. But it matters. I know this stuff sounds silly, but that you've taken effort and put together a really nice profile picture. I mean, of the two, I have to say, I think that Binyamin and Mulderwork, their photos really look, they have a solid background, they look nice, they're professionally taken, or they look professionally taken. They really look like they're quote unquote, to use what LinkedIn says, they're ready to work. Kevin is almost there, but he has a shadow behind him. So Kevin's is almost as good. All right, any other questions, guys? Maybe you guys can answer this question. One of you can answer the question if you feel up for it. How do you take this worry about failure away and just accept that you're going to have to try and you will fail along the way, but as long as you're still moving, that's enough? How to take the fear of failure away?
For me, can you hear me?
Yeah.
uncomfortable situation. So trying to put yourself in a situation that you're not really comfortable with is going to help you be able to overcome the fear of failure really quickly. For example, let's say you're not usually very friendly, or rather you're an introvert and you don't socialize much. Then try to go, when you go out for one day or one afternoon, say I'll say hi to 10 people. Then because in that uncomfortable situation of saying hi to other people, you get to you get the ability to cope with the fear of failure and the fear of being in an uncomfortable situation. I don't know if that makes sense.
Anyone else want to contribute? Patrick's written there as well. Yeah, feeling forward, failure with feedbacks. It's really important. I don't know what that means. Repeat the quiz to try again. How do we get over the how do we get over this fear of failure? I was saying that I think a lot of people are worried about failing, and so it kind of paralyzes them. They're afraid to try because they're afraid of failing. And so I just wanted advice from, if anyone wants to share some advice on how can they avoid worrying about failing and this paralysis that comes from just not even trying. Yeah, find small wins that can propel you forward. That's a really good one. So are there any other questions? We can okay, Binyam's offering. Maybe Binyam, you can post that in Slack. That would be nice. Focus on stuff you know you're good at, then pick on the ones you were scared of slowly. Yeah. Also true. So
Can you hear me?
yeah, go ahead, Gerald.
Yeah, like for me, I think from experience, I'd say find something to hold on to. It could be a person, it could be a dream, but as long as that it remains constant, as much as you fail, you just work towards that. Like for me, what I hold on to is my baby sister. So like I set up a goal that I want to go into data science, and I've been on that goal, I don't know, for like the last 1 or 2 years, because yeah, so I just say that I have to be successful in data science so that in many ways I can support my little sister. So that's, for me, that's what I hold on to. So no matter how many times I fail, I just have to remember that my sister really looks up to me. So yeah, for me, that's it.
Okay, Patrick's contributed, Stephanie's contributed. Yeah. So things that I'm hearing as well are routine, finding allies, and they could be family or it could be friends. Looking in the long term, so it's not going to matter in 1 year or 1 month. Failing forward, we talked about taking lessons from failure. We also talked about it. One thing that I would also say is this is something that I'm not good at, but I need to learn, is also being realistic about what your chances and deciding what is real failure. So as we're out as we're out looking for jobs, somebody talked to me and they said, how many companies do you think that you need to talk to before you find one job? And we started thinking about what is that percentage. And so being realistic about what are your chances and what actually counts as a failure. So our current thinking is that we need to talk to 20 companies before we find a single job. And so making sure that you're realistic, and I've started changing my thinking. I don't view those 19 companies anymore as a failure. I view it simply as that's what it costs before you find the right job. And of course, it's only as numbers get big that it really comes out to that 5%. But being realistic about your chances. So Gerald and Stephanie need to have an offline discussion. Yeah, so any other thoughts or questions? I don't know. I think we're talking really in general terms. I just want to go back to the original idea that we started with. Come up with a plan for your overall life. When you look back on your life, how are you going to measure it? This is what the article talks about it. Use that to come up with pillars for what are the important things in your life, and then come up with realistic, ambitious, measurable targets in the 2-year time frame. And then you start on the implementation. And this is important because it makes sure that you are doing the things that are important, that you're finding the right balance between your different goals, that you are working hard, and that you actually, if you don't know what it is that you're working towards, you can easily end up just floating around and saying, okay, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing now anyways. But this conscious exercise forces us to say, this is what I want to achieve in my life. And even if it's difficult, then I can find a way to move ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, like for me, the biggest issue is sometimes on how to like actually execute a plan. So you can have a plan, but now how do you like execute it? So that especially long-term plans. So
So
that's
give me an
a
example, please.
what can I say? So for example, like let's say my final year project. I knew like I knew that I had to do a final year project. I started out way much earlier than most of my peers, maybe like a year before. But because I already knew like I'm gonna do this, I had A, B, and C in check. I had to wait until like a year later, in like the last 2 or 3 months, when I was rushing through because I already knew like I have everything in place. It's just now time to put it together. But if I had followed the plan from the start, whereby in the first 1 or 2 months I wanted to have completed this, then the next 2 3 months, something like that. So that discipline of actually sticking to the plan is the issue for me.
I think one of the hardest things to do is to stick with really boring work. And sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's monotonous, sometimes it's so many different things. But being able to find the discipline not only to do the exciting things, but also to do the boring things, it's really, really important. I don't know. It's like staying healthy. How do you at the end, none of us should be overweight, because it's so, we all understand how the human body works, and if we're overweight, it means that, or we're not healthy in terms of our, what do we do? It's because we're eating more than we're burning, and all of us know we can all go for a run, we can all do jumping jacks in our lockdown situation. We can control what we eat, but it's just being very clear on what it is that I need to do, and then actually doing it. A lot of success is just doing really boring work. Unfortunately, it's part of it. There's no job that doesn't include that. There is no single job that doesn't include that. I have no magic trick for you, Gerald. If you come up with a plan and you want to be successful, and if you come up with a plan that says you have to do steps A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you stop doing the steps after C, how can anyone help you? You just have to do it, even if it's boring. And this is why writing it down helps. This is why having a support network helps. This is why having a regular meeting with supervisors helps, or peers, or whatever. But you just have to do it. There's no other solution that I can see. And I would also say that using some fancy technology, project management system, blah, 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 these are all tools, but actually doing the work is the thing. Any other questions? It's really not rocket science. It's just doing the boring work. I mean, this stuff it's like making your profiles. I think it was pretty straightforward, but it's kind of boring, right? To get your CV ready, and to take care of the formatting and deal with all the complaints that I had. It's not hard. It's just boring, but it's important. All right, last chance for questions. Otherwise, you guys know where to find me. Is there anyone who doesn't have a clear idea of what they should be doing with the 2-year plan? And is there anyone who has a question, a real worry about their career that they really feel stuck about? If you really feel stuck about what to do next in terms of your career, I think if you have a good photo, a good profile page, you have a good CV, the next step that we're going to work on together is to come up with a good freelancing profile. And we want to make sure that each of you gets at least a toe wet, if not the whole foot wet, in the world of freelancing. And then we start, and then we see how it goes. How do you make a realistic plan when you don't know what's out there? That's okay, Rahel. So start with you need to, well, I think that you can, so I would say this is why numbers, you don't need to put numbers onto everything, right? So if you say, look, I want to make 10 million bucks and you don't know if that's realistic, okay, so then don't put a number to that, but you can come up with a plan that you think is realistic, and realize that even if you don't reach that within 2 years, I think you have enough soft information, or you have access to people that you can ask questions to. And so this is maybe another important part that we haven't talked about. You should talk to other people, and other people, your peers, colleagues, mentors, friends, can help give you ideas on what's realistic or what's not. And they may even help give you ideas on how do you go ahead. So put something down, make it as good as possible, share with other people, get their feedback. Binyam, I don't know if you have a question or you said you know what to do.
So I actually have a little different case.
Okay.
So I prefer talking to you in private, maybe some other time.
Sure. Yeah, reach out.
Okay.
All right. Okay, everyone. It's been a super long call. Lots of fun games in the middle. Even if it seems nebulous, doing the work, do the boring work of starting to try and write it down, even if it seems like you're lost. I don't want you guys that in 2 years you're just lost and you've just taken whatever job, even if it's a well-paying job. I would like you guys to each take a very conscious action. And if you don't know even where to start, then figuring out what is the right question to ask yourself is even a step ahead. So if you don't even know where to start, it means you don't even know which question to ask. So you can rely on the frameworks that we've provided, or you can go and meditate or walk or pray or do whatever else works for you, and just start. All right. So I'm going to stop recording.